Snoo here, signing in. My first ever video on YouTube. We will explore some hilarious Reddit posts on this channel. I know you guys will support your very own Snoo. As we all know, our parents are responsible for our existence in this shitty world with effing faces. Let's start this channel with some embarrassing things we experienced due to our lovely parents. Before we start this video, for every subscriber we get a new kitten is born, so hit the subscribe button. My dad, influenced partly by Bad Boys 2, decided to mess with my boyfriend on my first date by acting like a hard ass. He filled a whiskey bottle with tea, and when he answered the door he chugged the whole thing while staring my boyfriend down, then tried to break the bottle over his own head. The date was cancelled due to the hospital trip, and I became known as the girl with the batshit insane father. "Don't concuss yourself this time" became the running joke once I was able to get a date again. Had my first boyfriend in middle school and brought him home one time. At one point my mom made him bring me my clean laundry. And by that I mean a single pair of pink High School Musical underwear. I cried from embarrassment, but he was actually pretty cool about it and comforted me. Then he cheated on me. After I submitted a job application to a manager when I was 16, my mother barged up and started going on and on about how I was really shy and not much of a people person. Yeah, that's what a manager wants to hear about an applicant for customer service. When I was 8 years old, I was obsessed with the new Charlie's Angels movie with Cameron Diaz, Lucy Liu, and Drew Barrymore. There's a scene in the movie where Drew is dressed in a patriotic jumpsuit at NASCAR racetrack, and I really wanted to have that outfit for my Halloween costume. My mom is a costumer and, God bless her, made my costume from scratch to resemble Drew's jumpsuit. Well, as you can probably imagine, an 8-year-old girl does not have the cleavage to fill that jumpsuit out. So my mother decided to add massive fake tats to this costume. I was mortified, and for some reason she would not take them out. So for Halloween that year, I had my arms crossed all of trick-or-treating. I still look back at the pictures from that year with deep anxiety. She Googles my boss's phone number, called him in his office, asked him to put me on the phone. In his office, I was in a meeting with a client. I didn't answer her call on my cell phone, in the middle of a work day. She wanted to bitch about my stepfather, and wanted to talk now. No emergency or anything. She just wanted to talk and gave zero shish about the consequence of her actions, as per effing usual. And that's the day my boss and pretty much the entire company lost respect for me. When the mom of their coworkers called him on his boss's office to talk about personal shish. A few months later, I resigned. There was nowhere to go in that place anymore. Maybe not the most embarrassing, but certainly top 10. My mom went through this phase where she would talk during movies, specifically about what's going on in the movie. She was also terrible at paying attention to what was going on, so oftentimes what she was explaining was incorrect. In addition, she would try to talk over the movie. Mom would occasionally have to yell to make sure she was heard over the action scenes. Imagine, if you will, watching the aftermath of the stampede scene from The Lion King and the person next to you yelling, "Simba is sad because her dad died." Quote, "Unfortunately this is not a fun story. When I was 16 I had a big birthday party at our house. It was wonderful. I got to invite close to 30 friends, including new people from school. My dad made sure to have my favorite chocolate mousse cake as dessert. It turned into just a bunch of teenagers having a great time and talking. Then my mom was suddenly drunk. We never even noticed her drinking. She began microwaving slices of cheese on a paper plate and eating it with her fingers. Most of the kids didn't notice except for my BFF, who had some prior knowledge of her addiction. Kids began leaving, but not before my mom then began asking one of my other friends who was 15 about her ex-life and was she doing one of the other boys at the party. I thought I would die while standing and watching it happen. When I was 10 or so, I was struggling with being too big for kids' clothes and too skinny for most juniors' clothes. I was trying on this dress with a mesh area around the neck in the department store dressing room, and it was so big on me that my nipples literally showed through the mesh part that was supposed to be around my collarbones. Kids that age are moody, so I just lost it in frustration and started crying. My mom was like, "Oh, just let me see," but I didn't want her to see because that meant showing the whole fitting area. My nipples. Finally I showed her, and when she saw how upset I was, instead of comforting me, she decided to mimic me, fake cry in my voice saying, "Oh my god, everyone can see my nipples," and flash everyone in the dressing room. When I was young we had a pajama day at school but I always just wore my boxers to sleep. Well obviously a kid can't show up to school in just underwear but I was too little, dumb to understand that. Why my mom allowed me to go and even drove me there, I have no idea. It was the most embarrassing day of my life and the school had to call my parents to come pick me up halfway through the day.
Me, baby. Oops.
It was my 16th birthday and my family went to a fancy Italian restaurant. The staff came over to sing happy birthday to me and my dad started singing along loudly in a bad Italian opera kind of accent. We are not Italian. The staff was so stunned they just stopped singing. The other customers around us laughed and applauded and the staff just walked away. I was mortified. My mom pulled up my skirt, causing me to involuntarily flash a room full of people at a Christmas dinner. I was absolutely mortified. She wanted to check for self-harm scars on my thighs, apparently. I've never self-harmed before. She should not be allowed to consume alcohol. Edit: to answer the FAQs in the replies, I was 18, and I was wearing underwear. When I was 5 or so my pre-K did a play based on Noah's Ark. It was a pre-K attached to a church. We were instructed that our costume was supposed to be raincoats, rain boots, umbrellas. I didn't have any of those things but begged my dad to get me at least one of them so I'd fit in and follow the guidelines. Fast forward, the night of the play. I'm frantically scanning the audience because my dad is always late. He finally shows up and brings me a life jacket. I had to stand up there with all the kids in their little raincoats in a life jacket. I was really embarrassed. Dad's defense was that I was the only kid who would have survived the flood. Tears of joy. I can laugh now but I sure wasn't laughing then. I was 13 and waiting for a ride with my sister and parents at Dollywood. Across the way, two very pretty girls about my age were smiling at me. I smiled back and acted all cool, because I was a skater boy with skater hair, and my vision streetwear and some shirt with a skull on it or something. It was working too. The girls whispered to each other and giggled and one even waved at me. Then my mom reached her damn hand in my face and popped a pimple right there public. The girls were aghast. I was humiliated. I have never forgiven her. I have a Dollywood story too. We were with a church group and my parents were along, because they wanted to extend our family vacation in the area. My father was walking around with us and I had wanted to ride a ride. I couldn't find him after the ride so I headed up front at the organized meeting place like we had been told. My parents and most of the church group were there. My mother starts yelling at me for running off, and spanks me in front of everyone. I was 13. I was 10 years old and my two best friends, girl and boy, were sleeping over that night, and my dad, he overshared that he proceeds to tell my friends the story on how I was conceived in the back of a car on a cold night somewhere. I was so mortified, and my friends were just as uncomfortable as I was, and we collectively agreed to ignore the whole ordeal. Also, he brought the cake out to the lounge wearing only his undies and a bow tie. It was a rough night. My mother insisted on seeing exactly what I bought for clothes to make sure they weren't too baggy, until I went away to college. When I was 17, we were buying jeans at the Gap, and when I wouldn't basically do a fashion show for her for every pair of pants I tried on, she WLED her 58-year-old self under the door of the dressing room, where I was trying them on. I'm a guy, and the dressing room had a line out the door. Everybody saw, everybody heard. Mom made me call my 8th grade social studies teacher at home to ask if I could use him as a job reference. He lived with his parents still, and I asked for him by first name. He waited for me at my locker the next day to tell me never to phone his house again, parents' house, and never call him by his first name again. Didn't get the job either. Mom denies this ever happened, and claims she would never demand I do something so strange. Shit! I came home from school with head lice. Instead of telling the teacher, who would send a letter home to everyone, without specifically naming which child they noticed had liced, my mother rang every person in my class that she had the phone number of. She would have a chat with the parent all, yeah, she has head lice so you need to check your kid. I probably got it from someone in my class, and the whole class likely already had lice, but kids don't realize that, so the whole class were calling me dirty, and saying I infected them. It was horrible. I was hysterically crying while she called people. When I was a senior in high school I had left the lights on in my truck all day and had to call my dad to come jump start my car. Now my father is 6'1" and has a very large belly. Mother F rolls up in cloth shorts and no shirt to jumpstart my car. Then there was the time a few years earlier that my mother had sent him up to school to give me a sandwich before a football game. The man's boxers were longer than his shorts. My mother dressed me and my sister as Nazis to a local fete. We sat on a float and waved at people. We won the competition, but I don't feel right about it. My mom was pretty fed up, so I have an endless list. The one that comes to mind right now is the time she sent me to go pick my younger brother from the pool. I, being a 13 years old active kid, joined him and started playing with his friends instead. I guess she got tired of waiting for me, and decided to come to the pool to check up on us. She came and found me in the pool, yes, wearing regular clothes, shame on me, playing Marco Polo with the guys. She yelled my name, took her slipper off, and threw it on my head. Then she went on calling me ASLT for swimming with guys. Every guy there went quiet. I think the silence was one of the most unbearable thing. Still prickles my skin when I think about it. I was so embarrassed. I remember that walk home, my head down in shame. Can't believe I thought I did something wrong. Cried myself to sleep. What's funny is she didn't even ask my brother to come back with us. F you, Mom. I'm glad our relationship is better now, but you made my childhood a nightmare. F you. If you enjoyed our video, then hit the like button. And do share some of the embarrassing things you experienced due to your lovely parents. I am